welcome to the professors. I'm Paul Fabrizio,
I'm Don Frazier.
and we're at McMurry University in beautiful Abilene, Texas. And our guest today this is special for us, Don, a real step up in who we have on the show. Not just a professor, but a dean.
A dean.
A
Dun,
dean
dun, dun.
of the Johnson School of Business at McMurry University, Paul Mason. Dr. Mason, welcome to the professors.
Thank you very much.
It's an honor to have you. And what we want to do today, because you're a real live, honest to goodness economist, is talk a little bit about how you got here. And then we want to talk about what is economics.
Yeah, economics, please.
And what do you do? But let's start with who you are, where you came from. So, Paul, take it away.
Okay. Well, I'm an economist, as you indicated. I have a master's degree in economics from the University of Delaware and a PhD in economics from the University of Texas at Austin. Concurrent with my work at UT, I taught economics as an instructor and then an assistant professor at what then was called Southwest Texas State University, now Texas State in San Marcos, for 4 years. Then I spent a year teaching finance at Clemson University. And then 31 years at literally every rank from adjunct professor to endowed full professor at the University of North Florida. I was also a department chair for 9 years and acting dean for 7 months. And, I really enjoyed the administration part of it as I got further into my career and really wanted to be a dean. And as a consequence, I applied for dean's jobs all over the country and ended up here at McMurry in a very good position because we had just finished an endowment campaign for $10 million. And I get to spend the proceeds of that.
So you got
to
it on the
support
back.
the School of Business.
Whoa. Have you ever heard of a show called The Professors?
Yeah, no fooling. Now, are you native? Where are you native to?
Actually, I was born in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, were you really?
And I lived there until I was 14. My father was an economics professor. He actually, when I was a kid, he owned a liquor store that my grandfather opened about 6 months after Prohibition was repealed.
That's applied economics.
Yes. And he ran this store until the early to mid 60s. And he realized that the store was kind of going downhill. It was in downtown Buffalo, which now is still not good. It was a lot worse then. And he realized that he wasn't going to be able to afford to send my brother and I to college. And so at the age of probably about 46, he went back to get a master's degree and then a PhD in economics.
Wow.
At what now is called SUNY Buffalo. We always called it UB. And so he got his PhD at almost 51.
What a cool story.
Yeah.
And then his whole purpose, and he was a very thoughtful man, his whole purpose was to get a job teaching economics at a university that had tuition remission.
Right.
And so he got a job at Villanova, and he was there for 15 years before he passed away. Was an associate professor and a longtime department chair. And so he was my first department chair.
Oh, wow.
And
Did he pass your class? I mean, did you pass his classes?
no, I never took his classes.
Oh, okay.
And I may not have passed. He was tough. I mean, he really knew his stuff, and he expected the students to do what they were supposed to, and if they didn't pass.
Yeah, that's probably a good policy.
And actually, I was a student at Villanova for 2 years and didn't have to pay any tuition, but our agreement was that I would be able to transfer away after 2 years. It was supposed to be the agreement with my younger brother too, but he got to go to the University of Kansas for 4 years. So I'm not bitter about that at all.
No, we can't tell.
Yeah, I love Villanova and I love Villanova basketball, but I transferred to the University of Delaware in part because I was a math major at Villanova, and when we got to rings and fields and vector spaces in in advanced calculus, I said, there's no numbers anymore. I got to get out of this.
Oh.
And so the applied field that I was familiar with because I grew up with it, was economics, and so that's what I did. But I took one statistics class. It's actually the class I'm teaching right now. I took that at Villanova, and the professor for that class was Ed Mathis, who eventually became the dean at Villanova. But Ed was a student at the University of Buffalo, where my dad was. They were in the PhD program together. Ed came to Villanova sometime after my dad. And he was up for tenure the semester that I was in his class. And my dad was his boss. And so I can still remember sitting in the second row with my wife, at that time my girlfriend.
And he got y'all choked up when it turned romantic, didn't it? Well, love in an economics classroom.
And he taught the class just to us. He never looked anywhere in the classroom except at my wife and I, because I was his son's boss. He was up for tenure, and he was going to make sure that I got it. So that was uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Did you get an A in that class?
I did not. I got a B+.
Whoa. What about your girlfriend, more importantly?
She got an A.
She got an A, okay.
Yeah. We'd study together, and I'd know it all, and I'd teach it to her, and then she'd get an A, and I'd get a B+.
You're an effective teacher.
Yeah. But that convinced me, even though I had really already made up my mind to transfer, that I needed to leave Villanova so I could major in economics, and which is what I did at Delaware.
What is the attraction for you to economics? I realize your dad did it during formative times of your life, but what is it about it?
I've always believed that there are basically two kinds of minds.
Okay.
There are those who are highly analytical, who gravitate towards more analytical disciplines, of which, in my humble opinion, economics is the most analytical. And then there are those who gravitate more towards memorization, like those who go into medicine or history.
We would debate that.
Yes, I understand there are analytical
He isn't even
components
talking
to
about
history.
political science because he's smart.
That was the sound of a round going through the rigging. Wait a second.
But, my brother went into medicine. He's an anesthesiologist. He has a different kind of mind than I do.
Sure.
And, he can recall all kinds of drugs and anatomy and physiology, and I couldn't possibly do that. Not when I was younger, not today. And so I gravitated toward a field that took best advantage of my skills, which were analytical.
But there's a lot of skills that
There
are
are,
analytical.
and
So
I would argue that history is analytical.
I would too.
I would argue it is analytical, but less so than economics. But we probably would fight over that.
But what is it? I mean, yes, it's analytical, but there's got to be more, right?
Well, there is. My outside field was in finance, and I taught finance at Clemson, and that was a really good opportunity for me because it helped me understand whether I preferred economics or finance. Finance is less analytical; it's more like accounting, which at the lower levels at least is not particularly analytical. And I didn't have an interest in that. I enjoyed teaching finance, but not as much as economics. I actually started in an MBA program. Once I finished my undergraduate degree, I was teaching high school math, and I went back to get an MBA. And I took a few management classes, and I was so bored I couldn't stand it. And so I dropped them, and I went into the MA program in economics instead.
Oh, cool.
So what was your doctoral dissertation on? What did you specialize in then?
Well, that's interesting because, I did my doctoral work here in Texas, but I literally, before I came back to McMurry, had only lived in Texas at that point when I started my program for a few days because I grew up in the Northeast.
Sure.
First Buffalo, then Philadelphia. And I had never been out of the Northeast except to go visit my maternal grandparents in Miami. And I came to Texas, and I started my program here, and I was working on an analysis that's called linked oligopoly, which has to do with the way banks behave relative to each other when they encounter each other in different markets.
Okay.
And my dad had actually done an analysis similar to that in Florida, even though he was at Villanova in Philadelphia. And so I said, well, why don't I look at that relative to Texas? And he did banks and I did savings and loans.
Oh, man. Savings and loan was kind of a hot topic there
well,
for a while.
yeah, especially in the early 80s.
Yeah, just before the crash.
Yeah, well, it was about 6 or 7 years before the crash. But what made it interesting is when I started on the project was right after the Garn-St. Germain Act was passed, which gave S&Ls all kinds of additional powers that they hadn't had before, which they ultimately misused dramatically.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, we had to crash in '87.
Wow, we've got a break coming up.
We do.
So when we come back from the break, let's unpack that a little more and then figure out exactly what goes on here in the Johnson School of Business.
All right. We'll be back.
Don't skip! Don't skip! Don't skip!
Hello, my name is Christopher Bartlett. I'm the studio manager with the McWhinney History Education Group, and you may be used to seeing my name in the end credits, or sometimes you'll see me sitting here as a special guest host. But right now, I'm here to talk to you about an amazing new opportunity. We have created a Patreon. To put it simply, if you enjoy the content on this YouTube channel, then you can head on over to Patreon, donate money to us, and become a patron. And through your donations, more content will be made. Basically, it breaks down like this. With $10, you will receive a short thank you video from Dr. Frazier and Dr. Fabrizio. With $25, you will be able to take part in a patron-only poll. With $50, you will get swag. These items include a choice between 2 prints of paintings and signed copies of Dr. Frazier's books, Blood on the Bayou and Thunder Across the Swamp. With $75, you will receive exclusive videos that will not be available anywhere else, not on YouTube and not on SoundCloud. These videos will be just for you, the patrons. With $100, your name will appear in the credits. See that right there? That's where your name can be. Finally, for $500, we will send you a signed collector's edition of Phil Collins' book, The Alamo and Beyond. Yes, it is signed by Phil Collins himself. And remember, for all the higher donations you do, you also get the stuff from the lower ones as well. So it's pretty cool. And when we reach our goal of $5,000, Dr. Frazier and Dr. Fabrizio will give you their own personal ranking of the presidents from worst to best. Coming from the perspective of a historian like Dr. Frazier and a political science expert like Dr. Fabrizio, you really don't want to miss their ranking and why they put them in that order. If you enjoy this content and want to see more, if you believe in our mission of making history accessible to everyone, then head on over to our Patreon and donate as much money as you're willing to give. You'll help us continue what we're doing, and you'll get amazing gifts as our way of saying thank you. Now we return to your regularly scheduled programming.
And we're back. Welcome to The Professors, a podcast that is available not only on YouTube, but also on SoundCloud.
Yay.
So if you don't want the pictures, I tell everybody I have a great face for radio.
He's not the only one.
Yeah,
So.
so
Makes 3.
If you don't want to look at
So in other words, don't watch us on
ugly
YouTube.
people, you can always listen to it on SoundCloud as you commute to and from wherever you're going. And if you like what you're listening to and you want to support us, we also have a Patreon page where you can actually make donations to help keep this podcast rolling.
All right.
So,
Thank you, Don.
certainly.
I'm Paul Fabrizio.
And I'm Don Frazier, and I usually read the commercials. So,
He's actually really good at reading commercials.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, that's his specialty.
that's all I do, man.
And of course, Paul Mason, the Dean of the Johnson School of Business at McMurry University, is our guest today. We're delighted you're here. And you need to tell us, what's the Johnson School of Business? Who's Johnson?
Well, the Johnson is actually Johnsons.
Johnsons.
Walter and Virginia Johnson, who were longtime residents in Abilene. He was the CEO of First Financial Bank, who really got them rolling. And they were very active at McMurry. They were very active in the United Methodist Church. And he was on the board of trustees at McMurry. And interestingly to me, because most times when a school is named, it's named after a donor who gave significant amount of money. In the case of McMurry, the decision was made by the donors to reflect on the contributions of Walter and Virginia Johnson and say, we're going to raise the money, but we want to name it after them to recognize their contributions. And so it's the Walter F. and Virginia Johnson School of Business, and it's named after those two individuals, supported by their family, but mostly supported by other groups, large numbers of donors.
Okay, I didn't know the Johnsons.
No, I didn't either.
No,
but
they passed away a number of years ago. I didn't know them either, obviously, but I met their sons, Bruce and Chris, and their spouses, and the younger generation really is thankful that McMurry took the steps to name a school after their parents. They provided me with a picture of their parents when they were all dressed up, and we have that on a plaque outside the dean's office. And we're going to commission a painting of the Johnsons that we're going to hang somewhere in the building to recognize their contributions.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And First Financial Bank Shares is now the iteration of what he helped manage and really grow. And that's really one of the most phenomenal stories. I mean, it's a really cool business story in and of itself. It's one of the most successful banking stories I think I know of, and probably one of the one or two considered highest rated, safest banks in the United States.
Right.
Started right here in Abilene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that in a time where most community banks have been in trouble.
Yeah,
Right.
correct.
And lots of them have gone out of business. First Financial has really done quite well.
And expanded aggressively across the state of Texas.
Yeah, even during the Great Recession.
Correct.
Yes.
It was still ginning right along, so it's always been pretty solidly led.
Yeah, and ranked really high in the ratings that are done for banks.
Yeah.
So, what's a dean?
That's an interesting question. A dean is, generally speaking, the leader of a school or a college. In my case, I wear a lot of hats. I'm dean, but I'm also department head. But generally speaking, deans have a job whereby part of our job is to raise money. Part of our job is to be a strategic leader for a school. Part of our job is to communicate with the department head, which I have no trouble doing, but also with the faculty.
Now there's Paul talking to himself again.
Are you ever interrupted in those conversations by yourself?
I definitely, I am.
You get into arguments.
That explains why he's rocking in his chair in the corner, one of the unoccupied classrooms.
When I was at the University of North Florida, I was a department head. And the dean asked me to also be an associate dean. And I perceived that to be a conflict of interest. My job was to represent my faculty as a department head, but an associate dean, it was a different role entirely. And so I turned him down. I was not going to do both of those jobs. Now I'm a dean and a department head.
Doing them both.
But then again, I don't have anybody I have to fight with over decision making in that regard, and I can represent my faculty in both roles.
Tell us about the school. How many faculty? What do they do?
Just asking that same question because we're a small operation here at McMurry.
Yeah. Including me, we have 9 faculty.
Okay.
But that's 3 more than we had when I got here.
Yes.
And we're a diverse group. We have basically one person per discipline. With the exception of management. And, we do have 2 accountants, but we have 1 instructor and 1 tenure track faculty. We've got 1 in finance. I'm an economist. In management, we have 2. We have a professor of entrepreneurship who's also in charge of international business. We have 1.5 people in CIS. And we have 1 in marketing. And then we have some adjunct professors who really contribute quite effectively to our program.
And
Eh,
CIS is Computer Information
Information
System.
Systems.
Okay.
Correct.
'Cause I always get it confused with that show where the Navy guys try to solve crime.
NCIS?
Yeah,
Yes.
see?
Yeah.
Just leave the N out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do that here on this campus.
That's right.
Now, do you have an investment fund? A student-led
We do.
investment fund?
And it turns out it's quite large compared to schools our size, but also schools that are a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the University of North Texas yesterday
Mm-hmm.
at the conference for Texas business deans, and they have what I desperately want, which is a trading room. So if there are any of your listeners out there that are interested in contributing a couple $100,000 to have a trading room named after themselves at
Oh, man, that'd
McMurray,
be cool.
I'd like to meet them.
Okay.
But they have a trading room at North Texas, and it's relatively small. It's probably about the same size as the studio, or maybe even a little smaller. And on the door, they indicate that they manage about $330,000.
Ah.
Now, that's not entirely the truth. There's more to it than that, but we manage $1.5 million.
Whoa. And the fund started out
At $1 million.
At $1 million. So
Yeah.
it's
So our students have grown it by $500,000.
Yeah, $500,000 in 6 years. And, they've done quite nicely.
Yeah.
The market's been pretty solid, but
Yeah, that helps.
but they beat the professionals in terms of their performance. And we have two 3-hour classes that we offer for students, and some can take the first one only, and most take both of them. And they trade domestic equities exclusively, which I would prefer we not do. I'd rather let them trade more broadly than that, but those are the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done quite nicely, and it's a very effectively run operation. Brian Deaton is a professor that runs the program, and it's a learning experience. We've sent students to a number of different companies in financial markets and financial investments. One of our students from 3 years ago, Garrett Betts, is now trading bonds at First Financial.
Wow.
Okay. We're going to have to stop.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, but I'd like to learn more about how you guys are kind of flourishing and what the plans are for the future over there. This is pretty exciting stuff. We'll be right back.
Bear Leader Tours. Where will Bear Leader Tours take you? Everywhere. Paris, Bruges, Trier, battlefields, Pearl Harbor, Pacific beaches, New Orleans. Join the adventure. www.mcwhinney.org. When you support McMurry History Education Group, you also support the many young workers who operate and maintain the company's digital operations. These are dedicated university students who handle many things such as filming, recording, and editing content for McMurry, as well as cultivate the layout and structure of McMurry's various websites, including its associated channel on YouTube. We are a nonprofit organization that exists from donations from interested persons and history enthusiasts alike. Donations enable our students to obtain a higher education, job training, and career bolstering skills. If you would like to donate, please visit us at www.mcwhinney.org and click on our About Us tab to learn more.
Welcome to State House Press, a nonprofit publisher of quality books. State House Press and the McMurry Foundation Press are part of the Texas A&M University Press Consortium, which handles retail distribution for several small but distinguished publishers. Our entire list of offerings, with pictures, summaries, prices, and easy online ordering, is available in our section of the consortium website. State House Press is proud of its reputation for high standards of scholarship and readability. In addition to this, we at State House Press have recruited the talents of individuals such as Phil Collins on his book, The Alamo and Beyond. We release not only texana by contemporary authors, but reprints of classic accounts of Texas life and history otherwise inaccessible to the public. Our book list also incorporates the publications of the McMurry Foundation Press, specializing in the history of the Old South and the Civil War. We strive with our titles to make history accessible to as many readers as possible. To accomplish this task, we have recruited some of America's leading historians, as well as bright new scholars. We believe firmly in narrative history, in telling a good story, and in telling it well, without losing sight of the people who've made history and the events that changed a nation.
For questions or business inquiries, please visit the Texas Book Consortium at www.tamupress.com.
And welcome back. I'm Paul Fabrizio,
Something making you chuckle. I'm Don Frazier.
watching our director as he's trying to count down with his fingers, and
And look backwards and chew gum at the same
yeah,
time,
exactly. He obviously didn't graduate from our School of Business. Anyway, I'm sorry. I should be nice to him. He could cut me off
That's
or
right.
something like that. Anyway, Paul Mason, the Dean of the Johnson School of Business at McMurry University. And the Johnson School of Business has been here for 3 years.
It's been
Officially?
titled that way for a little over 2 years.
A little over 2 years.
Right.
Okay.
We were the Department of Business before that.
Okay, and
Hang on for a second. We have to start this segment over.
Oh.
No. Our director has just cut me out of the
Oh.
YouTube feed. So yes,
Well,
I
you're
made
right.
fun
Then we
of-
don't need to start it over. Just live without Paul Fabrizio.
That's
Since
all
he's
right. I'll
being
just,
mean to you, Christopher. I'm sorry about that.
it'd just be a disembodied voice out there.
See, it's just like, yeah, you were saying it's been around for a couple of years.
Yes. And it was the Department of Business before that for decades before.
For decades. I've been here 26 years, and this is a new phenomenon.
It is, and it's really cool. I think it's the second name school.
What's the first one?
No, it's the first.
think
I was
it's the
thinking
first
the
name
School of
and they-
Education, but the School of Education is not named yet.
Yeah, it's not named for
So
anybody.
one day it could be. Now,
Yes.
tell us, you were talking off the air about what a trading room would look like.
Yeah, 'cause that was a new concept.
Yeah, they're relatively generic. If you look at them at different schools, they almost always have a glass wall so that people walking by can look in and see what's going on.
Like a zoo.
Well, yes, but hopefully it's different groups inside. But it's a place where students who are trading stocks or bonds can have access to Bloomberg terminals or some other
Mhm.
software and hardware, have workstations that they can use for their analytics, and then generally some kind of TV monitors where they can see what's going on in the market, and then a ticker usually, so stock prices rotating around the room, so you can keep track of what's happening to various stocks or bonds. It's in some regards it's beyond what's absolutely necessary,
Mhm.
but it is a way to simulate the atmosphere that traders are in the real world.
Down in the pits.
Yes, and it gets the students used to those activities and those kind of rooms, but it also provides, selfishly for the dean, a way that we can improve the building.
Okay.
And if I bring in donors to look around the campus and look around the building, and they see the trading room and they see the innovation room that we just completed, and they see some other innovations and updates that I want to make in the Cook building, it just will enhance the likelihood that they might support our program.
So
Very good.
what's what's the return on investment, the benefit of having a trading room?
ROI.
ROI. I'm talking all businessy.
The ROI is the ability to improve the quality of the instruction for the students,
Perfect.
so they have access to the kind of equipment that they'll use as professionals, in an atmosphere that's similar to what they'll use as professionals. And then the return on investment is if I can convert the one classroom into a trading room, and then maybe we have a behavioral lab, and then we already have the innovation room, and we develop some means by which we can enhance the Center for Free Enterprise and Entrepreneurship with an improved facility for them, and just work our way from Sales Boulevard down towards Old Main in terms of improving the first floor, and then find ways to improve the second floor. We can turn what is, quite frankly, an old building into a showplace for the School of Business.
And that'll benefit the whole school. I mean, so speaking selfishly, how would poli-sci benefit, or how would history benefit?
Well, if we can establish a process whereby we identify donors who are willing to support McMurry and improve the quality of education for our students, that'll attract more students to the School of Business, and also attract more students. If they, you guys know that students tour our campus when they're prospective students, and if they're impressed by the new Cook building, and that increases the likelihood they come to school here. The side benefit is they're taking courses from you guys as part of their core requirements, and they're taking electives from you as well, even if they major in the School of Business.
Sure. Or minor in School of Business. That's one of my go-to minors for my history majors, is to go and minor in business. And reason being is that you get the core business classes, and that's going to...
Yeah, and with our new programs in entrepreneurship and international business, we really anticipate attracting a lot of new students who can't get those programs elsewhere, especially the international business. And so we perceive that improving the School of Business will increase the demand for the entire university.
Sure.
And I'm sure that was the goal of the donors when they gave to the $10 million endowment, that it wouldn't just impact on the School of Business.
Yeah, because business is a hot major, industry wide.
Right.
And so you need to look like you're serious about it. So that makes perfect sense.
I think about some of the colleges that I've toured, and what stands out to me in so many of them was the trading room when they had them. It really, a well-made trading room is an exciting place.
Yeah.
And
it is.
There's a certain atmosphere about it that makes me, who's a political science guy, interested in business.
Yeah. Well, I said I was at North Texas.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for a reception Sunday night, and it was about 7:00, and there were 3 or 4 kids in the trading room Sunday night at 7:00, working on whatever projects they were working on.
Well, and what markets were open then?
The Asian markets.
Right.
The Asian markets. Yeah, you got to pay attention to those.
Absolutely. Yeah, Asians a long way away.
I'm really curious, because you said that the trading room, it has glass so you can look into it. In economics, there is an element of psychology. Why is that? You don't need that glass wall in the trading room, but you would insist on it. There's something going on here besides just
show and tell.
Yeah, exactly. This analysis includes something else. So if you could speak to that.
The economics is really about human beings and how they behave in markets, and in aggregate how they behave collectively. And that's all psychological.
Mm-hmm.
People decide that a product is desirable because of the advertising they see, or just perceptions of the product. And so the psychology is that people buy. The whole phrase "keeping up with the Joneses" is all about how people consumption is affected by those around them. And so if I perceive that a product is good and I go out and buy it, then my neighbors go out and buy it, and their neighbors go out and buy it. And that's just a psychological effect. So the trading room is a way to say, okay, we have an innovative program with high-tech access here at McMurry, and you can see it. And every day you walk by, you can see what's going on in there. And that says, well, maybe I want to learn about finance. Because finance is not just a profession. It's also a process whereby you can learn for your own household benefit how to trade stocks, how to trade bonds, or how the financial markets work. And as a consequence, it has that side benefit for anybody who walks by.
Yet we live in a country where half of the population doesn't own stocks, is not trading, is not invested in the stock market at all. Why is that?
Well, in large regard, it's because they have no excess funds with which to invest,
Yeah.
because they're living paycheck to paycheck.
Okay.
But another contributing factor that is often overlooked is that people can be very conservative investors, and particularly the elderly tend to be very conservative. So they're not trading stocks; they're in municipal bonds and bonds that
Or money under the mattress.
right. But the other part of the story is that you say 50% of people don't own stock. If you go back 30 or 40 years, that was closer to 80% of people who didn't own stock.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So it's actually got more people involved in financial markets today than there ever have been before.
And you take that as a good thing, that there's more people involved in
Well, yes. I mean, it helps guide the way our economy operates to have people buying and selling financial assets, which tells companies what they should be doing and creates winners and losers among companies based on public perception. And that takes us back to the psychology.
All right, we're going to come back after this break.
History has become one of the most fought-over battlegrounds in terms of shifting people's views and opinions about their country. In response to this, we have decided to launch a website called Go To History that will become your home for clear-eyed history content. Our objective is to put history out there, free of agendas, and allow you, the viewers, to decide what you believe and decide how to interpret this information. With experienced professors such as Dr. Don Frazier and Dr. Stephen Hardin teaching courses and creating agenda-free content for students and just plain history enthusiasts, the content of Go To History is vastly informative and unbiased.
History people, Phil Collins here. I am just giving a shout out to a couple of guys that you're going to be hearing from. And they're good friends of mine, but they're also incredibly knowledgeable historians. Dr. Donald Frazier and Dr. Stephen Hardin. Both great friends of mine, both helped me out with my book on the Alamo. And two guys, if you don't know much about history, these are the first two guys you should go to. Okay, what they don't know isn't worth knowing. Don Frazier, Steve Hardin, I hope you enjoy their presentations.
My name is Evan Williams, a history major at McMurry University, and I love the layout of the Go To website. I mean, it is singularly built from the ground up with user convenience in mind. Every study available is within a single Courses tab, with each lesson having a single page for each of its individual videos, text, visuals, and quizzes, all at easy grasp. This is most definitely history made simple.
Please log on to www.gotohistory.com. This portion of the show is reserved for advertisements. If you are interested in filling this portion with ads for your business, please call 325-793-4686 or email director@tfhcc.com.
And we're back, and this is Paul Fabrizio.
I'm Don Frazier. We're joined by Paul Mason, and we're talking about economics.
Right, on
But-
this show of Paul's.
That's right. I feel like I'm a
Paul
Paul
squared.
sandwich. Anyhow, I'm the creamy center, I guess. All right. If you like the show, you can support the show on our Patreon and become a donor and supporter so that we can have more innovative programs like the one you're watching. Or if you prefer to listen to our show, you can go over to SoundCloud, or you can pick up this podcast on iTunes. So plenty of ways to get our message inside your head.
Right. So we're talking to Paul Mason, of course, Dean of the School of Business, and we're talking about economics. And you mentioned before the break about the important role of psychology
Mhm.
and keeping up with your neighbors, that sort of stuff. I'm just curious because you talked about things from an analytical perspective, and then all of a sudden you're now talking about psychology. Is psychology analytical, or is that just a big unknown that you have in your fancy equations?
Well,
In your fancy
you
equation.
know, there,
Well, we have fancy equations in political science, and we put an E in there sometimes.
Do you?
Yes, because there's some things you can't explain.
I've got no equations.
one of the newer fields in economics is behavioral economics.
Okay.
And those who emphasize behavioral economics talk about the irrationality of human beings, whereas historically economics was all about rational decision making.
Right. Irrational exuberance. Wasn't that,
That
the
was
Fed chair at
yeah,
one point?
that was a Fed chair's commentary. That's where the psychology enters into economics, and it happens at the macro level, and it also happens at the
macro level means
That means the economy as a whole.
Okay.
Macroeconomic variables are things like GDP and inflation and unemployment and interest
Okay.
rates.
And the micro.
The micro is about the behavior of individuals, individual groups, or businesses,
Okay.
and those effects enter into behavior at both of those major levels. And is psychology analytical? I mean, if you're analyzing how a person behaves or why they behave the way they do, that's certainly analytical. And psychology is a social science in the same regard. It's not as mathematical as economics or numerical as economics, but it is analytical.
I'm teaching a course on the economic history of the United States. Just as an experiment, we're probably going to roll it into our curriculum, just because I like what's going on over in the School of Business, and my kids know nothing about the fundamentals of economics.
Correct.
I mean, they don't even have the nouns and verbs to even get get the conversation started. They don't know things like capitalism. They think socialism is cool because Bernie's cool, things like that. And so I'm trying to get them kind of a baseline education and using American history as a way to illustrate the point. But we talk about things like the tulip bubble and the beginning of the stock market in Amsterdam and things like that too. So it's not just America; it's proto-America and American. But I'm amazed at the role of faith and confidence in all this. And if you believe something, then all of a sudden you invest in something, and then that's how economies are built. That's sort of what I am sensing from this trading room too. If we get that built, not only will it benefit business students, but it'll benefit the university as a whole, and it shows that we're doing stuff that's really first class and real world. I'm big on real world applications, even for my history students, and it'd be nice to be able to walk down that hallway and see something like that. What's the price tag for something like that?
We have estimates. They're a couple of years old now, but around $200,000 for construction.
That's the build out.
That's the build out. And then what we've asked some donors for in the past is $75,000 for 3 years of one Bloomberg terminal.
But if you get 3, you get 12. Isn't that right?
Yeah, but that's $75,000 a year.
Yeah,
$75,000 for 3 years would get us 1.
But if let's just for argument's sake, and just so that people listening to this understand how this works, usually if you had a $2 million endowment that just paid for those Bloomberg terminals, that would probably cover 3, wouldn't it? Which would get you 12.
$2 million would be more than enough.
Yeah. So it'd allow you updates and upkeep and things like that. So, so really, the minimum level would be, $250,000 build out, because you always run over. And then once you get that in place, then you need $75,000 to get the terminal for 3 years. But ideally, seems to me that this is a $2.25 million ask, and then we're set.
Yeah.
And then once you get that in place, then all of a sudden, hey, we're rolling. And that leads to other good things rolling right down the hall.
I mean, as a private university, we recognize that we're tuition driven and we want to attract more students. So we want programs that are more attractive to 18 to 22-year-olds, but also to non-traditional students, which means offering programs that will help them get jobs and help them get high-paying jobs. And certainly the trading room would help in that regard for our students interested in finance. And quite frankly, because we're small, we allow students to participate in the student managed investment fund classes, even if they're not finance students, because we're either trying to motivate them to become finance majors or because it's valuable to them in their personal lives.
If you build it, they will come. That is the faith that you talked about.
Well,
that's the philosophy that we're talking about.
It sends
here.
a signal that we're serious about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty critical. You know, I mentioned that I like a practical application even for our history students, and I urge them to minor in business. You know, if you're making trades, you're doing analysis on those trades based on some sort of historical look back. And I tell my history students, look, you know, history is going to be applicable throughout the course of your business minor, because you can't make business decisions without some sort of context. And what we teach in the history biz is context. So that's why I think a trading room would be cool, even though I'm a historian.
And I agree. I totally agree. To me, the big thing is you have to know what's going on, because today, and that's
Correct.
what we focus
Present
on.
context, past
Present
context.
Political science is the field for that.
Yeah. And
so
the look back context is history.
Is this guy. So
and then
and
you guys are the point of the spear. So.
Yeah, who makes all the money.
Yeah, I have absolutely no problem being further back, you know, down the spear than
part
the
of the handle back
right.
there. Paul, we've got like 30 seconds left. Final message to our viewers and listeners out there?
Understand that economics and education of all types are absolutely crucial to young people and older people. Lifetime learning is the way to succeed, and you can't achieve that without the basics that you will learn before you get to college and in college.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul Mason.
Class dismissed.